Welcome to The Difference Makers, a Paladin Security podcast. We'll take you inside the world of security and share firsthand expertise from our industry professionals. Join us as we dive into everything security and explore the journeys of those who go above and beyond to make our world a safer and friendlier place.
Welcome to The Difference Makers. I'm Christina Heydanis. This month we welcome Hi Nguyen, a former RCMP officer who has had a decorated career in law enforcement, which also included a role in national security and acting as a bodyguard for former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Now, he is the Director of Protection Services at the University of Ottawa, where he oversees a team of 60-plus security officers and is passionate about evolving the industry through leadership. Today, he shares some of those tips with the goal of helping supervisors and leaders in the industry feel more confident. Hi, Hi. Thanks for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for having me on your podcast. That's awesome.
No, it was so great. I guess a backstory is usually we have Paladin security employees on our podcast to talk about security, but he actually reached out to us and was interested in sharing some knowledge on leadership, and I'm excited to have this chat. So why don't you first tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks. So I started my career in the RCMP back in 2003. And so I did 4 years as a patrol officer out in BC. And then I got transferred over to Ottawa to become a bodyguard for the Prime Minister of Canada. So I traveled all over the world doing the bodyguard thing for 4 years. And then I managed to attain my dream of becoming a counterterrorism officer. So joined the National Security Enforcement Team in 2011, and I was there for 6 years, doing kind of the James Bond thing, if you will, for 6 years, which was awesome.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about what that includes, because you're making it sound very exciting. So tell us a little bit about like what your day-to-day was like and why it was your dream to have that role.
Yeah, so initially I joined the RCMP because of 9/11. So that attack really shocked me, and it kind of pushed me off the sidelines to go and get involved and be part of the solution. So I applied in 2001 and got in 2003, essentially. Fast forward to 2011, when I finally get into national security. A lot of the work involves meeting people who have information that they want to share. And so lots of the work that I did more specifically was around developing human sources. So confidential informants that work with the RCMP, provide information, and so on. So eventually in my career in national security, I ended up doing a lot of undercover work as well. But most of what I was doing was around developing sources, getting information, doing undercover work. So there was a lot of surveillance, for example, following people. And then one of the big files that we were working on was a group of extremists in the city that were supporting ISIS overseas. So we were doing a lot of work to stop these people from doing these bad things.
Of course. So is there like a deadline on that you're like, okay, like, is it like a timeline that you're there for a chunk of time, or is it like, okay, I'm done with this, or like my capacity is too much that I have to move on with my life? So what kind of made you transition out of that?
I want to say it was a little bit of all of these things, in the sense that that's what I had joined the RCMP in the first place, right? So once I was in there and I had accomplished so many things, and I don't know if you remember, but there was an attack on Parliament Hill at the time. So I was part of the main investigative group that worked that file. So after all of this, first of all, I was completely exhausted. Like, we were working so many hours, we were working so hard. I think I was burning out. And so there was part of that, but there was also part of me that was like, I really achieved what I wanted to do in the RCMP. And there's just so many other things that I want to try and experience. Life is short, so I wanted to try other things, and so that was kind of what pushed me to really go experience other things outside of the RCMP.
Right. Very cool. So, what was the move like from policing into other areas and security for you?
So it's a very hard transition because when you're in law enforcement, being a police officer really is your identity. Like there's no difference between you, the police officer, and you, this, the dad or the husband or whatever. Like it's all part and parcel of you. So it's a very hard transition from the personal side. And you live inside a bubble. When you work for a police force, you're very much in a bubble. You see the whole world through that lens, essentially. And when you step out, it's a whole new world. Like it's almost like a new adventure. So for me, it was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work because you have to rebuild your network because you don't know anybody or very few people outside of the police force. So I had to really push myself to go networking, introduce myself to different people, really start from the ground up.
Yeah, for sure. So, what would you say was your biggest surprise or shock from when you moved from policing into security? Because I know there are quite a few misconceptions out there about it.
Yeah, the biggest shock when you do that transition is the fact that when you're in policing is the main business. That's what you do. Like that's what everybody talks about. It's the sole objective of your organization. But as soon as you transition out, even if you have a fantastic skill set and you know all this stuff, the company that you work for, that's not their business. So let's say you do security for a bank, or you do security for a hospital, or uh, the LCBO, whatever. That's not their core business. Their core business is serving their clients, serving, selling a product, for example, selling a service. Security is kind of a necessary evil that's part of this business. And so the mindset is completely different. And the priorities are different. The language is very, very different. And so when I did that transition, I really had to adapt because what, for example, in the private sector are things that can appear huge from a policing perspective is tiny, you know, and so you kind of everything, all of the your parameters, everything that all your triggers are different. So when you're in policing, if somebody gets punched in the face, you see that happen all the time. So it's not a huge deal. But when you're in corporate security, it is a huge deal. It's a huge deal if an employee gets punched in the face. Like we have to do something about this. It needs to be investigated, and so on, right? So it's all these triggers that you need to adapt to.
Right, for sure. So, going off of that, you are the Director of Protection Services at the University of Ottawa, where you oversee a team of 60 security guards. And since you're leading that team, you have to make sure the officers are trained properly and are at the top of the game. So, what would you say is the biggest challenge with that to ensure that the security is top of the line and all bases are covered?
Yeah, I think that the biggest challenge is having people on the team really understand what the mission is. Most I feel that most people don't really grasp, what's the end product? What are we supposed to be doing here in the end? Why are we here? Right. And so, really ensuring that everybody on the team is on the same mission, that everybody knows exactly why we're here and why we're doing what we're doing. And so, once you're clear, so for example, the end product of a campus security team is to make sure that everybody on campus feels safe and that they can go to school, not ever having to think about crime or, violent, offenses on campus, and they can graduate and have fun and go change the world kind of thing. And the same thing for the staff, right? Staff want to be able to come to campus, teach, and never have to worry about their cars being stolen or being assaulted on campus or something, right? So it's a feeling of safety that we're providing on the campus. So if you use that as a baseline and say, okay, guys, this is our end product. From there, once we start talking about training and we talk about de-escalation training or use of force training or first aid, you put everything through that lens of we are providing a safe environment for the students and the teachers. And so now it starts making sense because everybody understands why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of that too is putting the right people in the right places to ensure that you can be successful. And a lot of that for you is leadership and team building and collaboration. You're very passionate about all those things. So why is that all so important to you? And why do you feel that is what makes your operation run smoothly?
I'm super passionate about leadership because I've seen the effects of many places that have bad supervisors, and I've had my own personal experiences with having bad bosses. And the experience that says a supervisor makes it rain or shine on a team is absolutely true. And so I'm really passionate about law enforcement and security. I love what we do as an industry. I think we're essential. And I also think that law enforcement and security, it's a bit of an industry in crisis because there's all of these pressures that are pushing against our security guards, for example. And so in my mind, what I want is to give back by really ensuring that the next generation of leaders in the security guard industry are really top shape, that they know the skills. Because and I want to say this, especially in the security industry, there's very few people actually teaching supervisors how to actually lead. Because you start working for, say, Paladin, you've been there for 2-3 years. Hey, you're pretty good. We're making you a supervisor. And then, oh, you're an operations manager or whatever. But as you're going up, very few people are being taught, okay, here's how you deal with a problem employee. And here's how you deal with somebody who's always showing up late and that type of stuff. And there's actual techniques that you can learn, right? And what I'm seeing, especially in the security industry, is a lot of team leaders are stressed out because they don't know how to handle it. They're in charge of, say, 7, 8, 9 employees, and they're like, I don't know, and they've got a crisis of confidence. They're stressed out, and my objective is just to calm them down and say, hey, look, I'll show you. I'll show you how you can do this, and here's a technique to handle a difficult employee, or here's a technique if your team, it's like they're super unmotivated, it's hard to get them to do their jobs, and you arrive at end of shift and you have to pass on work to the other team, which looks super bad. And so I can teach them these techniques that I've learned over time, and mastered, and really applied new things with my own team that now I'm passing on, and I'm seeing great results, which is fantastic. It's team members that are confident, that can lead teams, and they can do it with much less stress, which, this is kind of the guarantee of the future, right? Because these folks that have 2-3 years of experience, after they've gone through some leadership training, they go on to be great operations managers and then territory managers and so on. Like they grow in the industry now, but they've got a really good leadership basis and they know how to handle things. The key to retaining employees right now for any organization is in leadership, because you're investing in making sure that you've got good supervisors all throughout your organization, and then you're going to limit the type of losses you're taking. Retention for every security organization, regardless if you're private security like Paladin, or you're in a hospital, or you're on a campus, retention is a huge problem right now. And so I really believe that the key to retaining these employees is actually to invest in leadership, because you're creating these good bosses so that now you're limiting the people that flee bad bosses.
For sure. And it seems like quite a simple thing that can be done, right? So why do you think it is something that is kind of maybe overlooked and kind of forgotten about for people that are promoted within the industry?
Yeah, I think that in the industry right now, there's always this competition for cost, right? Especially in private security, it's very cutthroat. It's always price, 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 price. So for organizations to invest in specific courses that they may not feel will benefit the guards, but I'm seeing a big shift when we're talking about leadership, because there is a cost benefit to it, in the sense that there's such a huge cost, or especially for large organizations like Paladin, in a couple of places that I've worked with. It also attracts good candidates, because it's a small industry, right? And a lot of the employees that work at Paladin will recommend Paladin to their friends, for example. So if your organization invests in leadership training and all that jazz, it creates this really safe environment and productive environment, then people want to recommend the place that they work. And so it helps the recruitment part of HR as well. So it just makes a lot of sense.
Well, and it's funny because, for instance, Paladin does have like a junior management training program, but some of these things too, like you said, you can just talk to some of your supervisors or some of the people that you're promoting and just give them some tips and tricks that are, everyday things that they can pick up and implement into their daily lives. So what are some easy tips or tricks that you think, could help someone who maybe is new into a supervisor or leadership role and help them find success?
I'll give you a tip, actually, that comes from the world of counterterrorism. So when you're developing human sources, your main job is to influence somebody to talk with you, to become your friends. You want to create a bond with somebody so that this person will give you information, and so on and so forth. And the way to do that is to know them, but to know them really, really deeply. So you have to be very curious about this person. So I might ask you, Christina, where did you grow up? And do you have a brother? Do you have a sister? And blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to ask you these questions, and I'm going to be very intentional in finding out about you and reflecting this interest in you. And because I'm going to be super interested in you, it's psychological, it's perfectly human. You're going to like me. And that's how it works. And it's the same thing when you're leading a team, the exact same team. And it's not done in a manipulative way, of course, but a very strong tip for anybody leading out there is get to know your people, get to know them very, very closely. So know where their interests are. Know what they do for their hobbies, know where they hang out, know that they've got kids or no kids, that they're getting married, not married. Oh, so-and-so's, pregnant or whatever. And it's just, you want to really get to know your people closely. And then when you have things that you need to let's say tasks you need to give to your team, then you can align that with their interests. So for example, let's say, Christina, you're really interested in overtime right now. You want to make a ton of money because you and your husband are planning to buy a brand new condo. Well, if I didn't look into this, I'll never know why you want to do overtime or even that you're interested in overtime. But let's say on top of that, you're a bit of a problematic employee. If I know all this, I can have a sit down conversation with you and say, hey, Christina, I need you to, work better here, or, here's better ways for you to handle these situations. I need you to perform better here, here, and here, because when you do that, it allows me to give you access to more overtime, which will imagine all the OT you're going to get, and imagine the condo that you'll be able to buy with that OT, and so on. And so right now I'm just improvising an example, but the key here is to align their interests with what you need them to do. And so if somebody wants more time off, somebody wants a better education, whatever it is, you can align the various needs here with your objectives, and then it makes total sense.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. I was going to say exactly that. It makes a lot of sense. So then, also creating trust would allow supervisors to have difficult conversations easier. So how about that? Like when you have to have, like, it's not all roses, right? When you're obviously leading a team. So how do you encourage people to be able to do that seamlessly without being uncomfortable, or without having people be angry, or anything like that?
Yeah. So having a difficult conversation, uh, I like to teach a very specific technique. There's a technique to do it. And I'll go over it very, very quickly here. It's a little bit more involved, but essentially what it is it's a technique where you're not accusing your employee of anything. You're just going to have a conversation, and it follows a very specific structure. And that structure, the acronym is B, like baby, F, I. So B stands for behavior, F for feelings, and I for impact. And so what you do is you start with recognizing the behavior. So let's say, for example, Christina, you were super upset last week and you sent me a really nasty email. I'll go through the structure and then say, okay, B, behavior. So I could say, Christina, last week I saw that you sent me an email where you were very upset and you were calling me this and you were calling me that in the email, and why the heck was I doing this and that or whatever, right? So I can just go over the email and just state the fact that's the email. Then I go into feelings. So I could say, Christina, you and I have a really good working relationship, and that really hurt my feelings. I thought you trusted me and I trusted you, but now I feel that I can't trust you anymore. And so you go into your actual feelings. You don't fabricate anything, but you say exactly how this made you feel. And then you finish with impact. And the impact part is, Christina, I'm afraid that if you keep sending me emails like this, our good relationship will be affected. And the promotion that you're looking for may not happen because that behavior is unprofessional. And then you just stop talking and you just look at the other person. So essentially, this technique doesn't accuse you. It puts you in front of the fact that you've hurt somebody emotionally, and then the ball is in your court. And it just ends there. And so what happens is, psychologically, most people never aim to intentionally hurt somebody's feelings, especially somebody they trust, right? So maybe they're frustrated, maybe they're venting or whatever. But then when they realize, oh, yeah, I didn't mean to do that. So you go through the BFI technique, and then it's miraculous. Like I've done it with numerous employees, and I've literally had employees just go, "Wow, I'm sorry. I didn't. I really didn't intend to hurt your feelings, or whatever that was." And then they're like, "Yeah, I'm not going to do that again," and so on and so forth. And it's just so smooth because it doesn't accuse, it doesn't elevate the tension between two people. It just stays very, very, very cool. And I even had an employee once who went into deep reflection after I used the BFI, that the person just was really thinking, and he said, "Look, I need to leave." And so he just walked away. He came back 10 minutes later and just went, "I think that's the best conversation I've ever had." And I was like, wow, okay, perfect. So that's one of the tools that you could use for a difficult conversation. I encourage anybody at Paladin to use this technique because it is so, so, so powerful. Of course, it's a technique. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. But I'm going to say, for me, 9 times out of 10, using BFI absolutely works.
Yeah, no, it sounds very interesting. It's something that's very easy to kind of implement into your day to day with whatever kind of issues that you're having. So, when you are if you do teach it to somebody to say, "Why don't you try this next time?" If you're talking to this person and you're struggling, like, "Why don't you bring this in?" Do you ever have those like aha moments where they come back and they say, "Yeah, it went great. Like, now, and I feel more confident in this role." Like, what is kind of your feedback when you do teach that?
Yeah, what I'm always stunned about is, well, I shouldn't be stunned, but I am surprised. It is when people come back and they're like, "It's a lot easier than I thought." People, we're never taught these things. Like, it doesn't matter. And honestly, I've been to a gazillion bazillion leadership seminars, and I've read books. A lot of it is fluff. A lot of it is big concepts, stuff that you can apply right now on the fly. But that one technique, that's you can learn that in 20 minutes, 30 minutes. You really fine tune it. You can learn it, and it's an actual tool you can use every day at work. And I mean, BFI, honestly, you could use it with your husband, you can use it with kids, you can use it with anybody you need to have a difficult conversation with. But the reality is that, uh, lots of people come back to me and they're like, "Oh, wow, that's way easier." And now it builds confidence. And I think that's one of the things that's present with our team leaders in security right now, is that they're in a position, but they don't really know what kind of tools they've got in their tool belt to use with their employees. And it's just a matter of really showing them, "Hey, why don't you put this in your tool belt? Start using these tools, and then we'll give you a little bit more, and then we'll give you a little bit more." And then in the end, they've got a tool belt full of tools that they can use and pull out. And if it's a motivation thing, there's tools for that. If they need to create trust, there's techniques, there's tools for that, and so on. And it's just you build those over time. But what I'm very much an action oriented person. Uh, I'm not into the theoretical fluff of things, although those things can be important. But I'm very much about what's practical, what you can use right now in the field. And so I've kind of accumulated these things from being in policing for 14 years, but also now leading this very large team of security people, where I'm literally applying all of my tools every day with everybody. And the results are just, they speak for themselves.
For sure. That's awesome. I mean, you've already shared so much information with us and so many interesting tools that anyone could implement into their day-to-day lives. What would be your one piece of advice that you would pass on just before we wrap things up that you think is crucial for people who are in the industry and wanting and moving up within the industry and just wanting to make sure that they do a great job?
Yeah. Well, there's so much, but I think one big piece of advice is never underestimate the value of trust. Trust, and you touched on that, Christina, it is so huge. Trust is everything. It's the glue that keeps everything together. And so you need to understand that trust is it's like a bank account. And every day you need to make deposits in your trust bank account because it's inevitable. Everybody, you, me, we all make mistakes. And when you make a mistake, unfortunately, you'll kind of make a withdrawal in the trust bank account. But if there's almost no money in that account and you overdraw your account, you're done. Your leadership is just blown out of the water, right? So you need to make these deposits frequently so that there's tons of trust in that trust account, so that if at some point you make a mistake, even a big mistake, even if you make a big withdrawal, there's still trust left in that account. And your employees will go, Christina made a mistake, but it's okay. It's just a mistake. We'll work through it. But if there's very little trust from the start, your employees are they're going to completely disengage from you. And that's kind of the one big piece that I want to just encourage everybody to really consider.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's such a good analogy to a simple way to think about it, to see how much of an impact that it does make. So is there anything else that you wanted to add that maybe we didn't touch on or that you feel it's important to kind of share?
Sure. I think that one of the things that's really important to understand is the importance of investing in yourself. Any great leader is continuously learning, right? Continuously getting new tools and so on. And so I encourage everybody to be reading something or follow a podcast, this podcast, for example, but follow podcasts, watch videos on YouTube, read books, really continuously keep yourself refreshed with information, invest in yourself. Very few organizations, whether in the private sector or the public sector, will invest in you, in your career. And so it really is up to you to put the time, put the energy, and if you've got a few dollars to put, invest a few bucks in yourself.
Yeah, definitely. That's very good advice. Well, thank you so much for joining us. There's so much more I want to talk to you about, but unfortunately we ran out of time. So I really appreciate all your insight and your tips, and I hope that everyone listening can implement them into their day-to-day lives and that it makes a difference. So thank you.
You're quite welcome. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for tuning in with the Difference Makers. If you want to hear more about the ins and outs of the security industry from real professionals, be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and share. Also, check out new episodes on the first Tuesday of every month. Till next time.